That answers the question. So you're reporting also? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear us on Zoom? Doug and Nancy? Excellent. So I'm going to call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Thursday, April 21st, 2022. I'm right, 7:32. We have designation of alternates. It looks like right now we'll need the two alternates unless some other commissioners come in late. So we have Doug and Dwight. Unless there's any objection from them, I'll seat you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Marcotte, do you mind?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Have a couple things under chair's report. My usual thank yous to commissioners for attending all of our meetings, and for staff work being done. We appreciate it. And thank you, Amy, for the meeting minutes. There's still more than enough time during this year to have the meeting minutes and pictures. So we'll keep track of that and remind you if it gets too late in the calendar. One thing I do want to, I brought something to the table. I handed it out. So I actually just put it together right before I left the office and went home. The reason I'm bringing this up is one big reason. The legislature is still in session. And last year there was a number of proposals about planning and zoning. Some of them actually passed. That came down with a lot of various mandates on towns that take away certain decision-making for certain zoning issues and takes it away from towns making decisions and more towards the state making some decisions. We went on record, actually, it was Gail Dickinson who made the motion way back on November 19th, 2020, that we basically opposed any limitations on local control of land use. That was passed by us unanimously. And during the session in 2021, we had, in a sense, reaffirmed that to when the session was coming to a close and a number of zoning bills were coming to the floor. And we had reaffirmed, I forget which meeting it was, that was still our position. This year, there's been a number of continued efforts on legislation to take even more zoning rules and decision-making away from towns and move them more and more to the state. Some of them didn't make it out of committee. A number of them have made it out of committee, especially some that have come out of housing. The legislature has a planning and development committee, but interestingly, a number of these types of proposals end up in other committees, including housing. Has a number of proposals. These are bills that are still slated to come up to the floor. Even if they don't make it to the floor in time, they can come up in emergency session, and sometimes things that don't make the calendar in time when the session legally has to end, these come up in special session, which is routine to bring up additional items that miss the calendar. But they are, for various intents and purposes, do take away more from our local decision making. I drafted something put together, and I'm open for discussion, but I'm actually going to make a motion. I tend not to as chair, but I'm going to make a motion because it's one of the items that I consider important, that we approve a resolution. We can fine tune the wording right before us, but basically, number one, reaffirming that we support people in Woodstock keeping local decision-making control about what happens in their town. They do that basically by electing town officials, such as us. We have public meetings, and we get their input. We're all elected and we're from the town, first of all. And that indeed people in their town, such as Woodstock, do know best what about their community and what's best for their community. And we, again, would like to reaffirm that we oppose any limitations on local control of land use. I know we've talked about some of this before. I brought it up a number of times. I've said this many times, publicly, that there's a big disconnect when you have people who don't live in our town, especially folks in bureaucracy elsewhere, making decisions about our town. Many of whom may not even know Woodstock or where we are. I always joke that sometimes when I would go to meetings on certain things that I did at the state level, people would think that I'm from Woodbridge when I mentioned Woodstock, which is a very different part of the state. So I have to explain to them where we are. But I'll make a motion that we approve a resolution. Again, I brought draft wording to the effect, the session is going to end soon. I think the first week of May it ends. So there's going to be a flurry of these bills coming up in quick order for votes. But I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
I'll go through that. So, and one thing, Delia reminded me of, I forgot to do the roll call, so I apologize. So let me just quickly go through the roll call, since we do need to put that on the record, and just say aye if you're here. Joe Adeletto.
Aye.
Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett is not here. Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Not here yet. Jeff Marquardt.
Aye.
David Miller, aye. And we know for the record that David has arrived. Joe Pulek is not here. Doug Porter.
Aye.
Dwight Meinowitz.
Aye.
And Timothy Young.
Aye.
I think with you here, I think we still need the 2 alternates, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we still need the 2 alternates, so that doesn't change. Thanks for reminding me about that. I forget sometimes the roll call. So, but we have a motion by Jeff Gordon, seconded by Jeff Marquardt, to approve a resolution. I won't read through the entirety of the wording. We also have it up on the screen, but I'll open it up for discussion. Joe?
I might suggest on the last line, Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission opposes any additional limitations from current Connecticut general statutes.
So that would read, Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission opposes any additional limitations. I didn't catch the rest.
From current Connecticut general statutes. Because we do have limitations anyway.
Yeah, from you mean current or just Connecticut general statutes, because they'll add to them.
Right. Well, if they add to them, then they're imposing more limits, which we're
Right.
saying we don't want
On
to.
current,
Current Connecticut general statutes.
so basically it would read, Joe, so I just want to make certain we have it clear on the record, that last law paragraph would be Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission opposes any additional limitations. You said from current,
From the current Connecticut
general statutes
on
on local control of land use. Okay. Thank you, Joe. It's always good to clarify. Anything from anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with this, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the right thing to do. I think, the state trying to take away our powers here and kind of step in and, try and take our place is wrong. And I think that other towns should voice their concerns on this as well.
Joe?
So what would happen with this?
Well, what we would do is when we had the prior resolution, we had to go to our legislators.
Okay, on behalf of the Woodstock Planning and
So
Zoning
when we had
Commission.
the prior resolution, I sent a formal copy to Representative Boyd, who acknowledged he received it, and to Senator Champagne, who acknowledged he received it.
Okay.
We would do the same to let them know.
Any value in sending it to all the members of whatever committee oversees planning and zoning?
There'd be a number of committees because a number of these bills are scattered across
Okay,
committees.
yeah.
So planning and development, housing. There's a few other, actually, I think one of the bills nominated in appropriations, which is a little unclear why. But they're scattered, I think, over 5 or 6 committees. We can send it to them.
I'm not saying we have to do 100%, but if we get more coverage than our local representatives who may not have a real strong voice, other people here of this resolution, it might
We
be more
can,
impactful.
because I can, the big committees are planning and development
Right.
and housing. Those are the two big
Those would be
ones.
two good ones.
And the roster is actually all on there. In fact, you can just click on their links and you can actually email them stuff,
Mhm.
which many times is what they want because their staff processes it as opposed to the paper copies easier. I can certainly do that. That's not a problem. We can certainly send that out beyond just our local legislators.
If the commission feels
Yeah.
that that's appropriate.
Sure. Yep. I just want to does anybody have anything else on this? I don't want to make certain. Nancy, Doug, do you have anything? I don't want to overlook you in case you have your hands listed up.
I'm all set.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all set as well and in total agreement. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything from anybody else? Anybody have any objection to, in addition, sending it to our state rep and our state senator, that we also send to the members of planning and development and housing? No. So, and in fact, sometimes a legislature might even be able to blast it out to everybody.
Yep.
If they have those all type email capabilities. Sometimes that's how they share the bills that get out there. If there's no further discussion, I'll go through the roll. So this will be to approve the resolution with the edits, Joe, that you brought up. So I have them written down, so I'll write up the revised copy, and I'll send the revised copy out to everybody as well. So Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Lackmer,
Aye.
Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
there
I
you
think
go.
that-
Oh, you were muted, I'm sorry.
It looks like an aye.
Is that an aye?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Jeff Gordon, aye. Jeff Marcotte,
Aye.
David Morse. Doug Porter,
Aye.
Dwight Reinowitz,
Aye.
and last but not least, Timothy Young. That so passes. We will take care of that. Thank you.
Jeff, I just want to let you know, Sid just joined.
He has?
Yep.
Where is he? Okay. So we'll have to note for the record, whatever time that Sid has now joined us. So we'll note that that was done after this vote. If you don't mind, Amy. So we'll just note that. So that actually means then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we only need one alternate now, because we're beyond that agenda item. I'm trying to keep things going in the order that we try to do alphabetically. Two people who would have been up in alphabetical order would have been Doug and you, Joy. Unless you're saddened and object. Since we only need one right now, that would then be Doug.
I made my voice heard tonight with the letter, so I'm good.
And you can continue to have your voice heard.
Thank you.
So, but unless you have any objection to being seated, Doug, we'll keep you seated. The next agenda item we have is citizens' comments. Are there any comments from citizens not on anything on the agenda? Okay. Meeting minutes, one of our most fun part of our meeting are the meeting minutes. And we have two sets, monthly business meeting for March 17th and the special monthly meeting on March 31st. What is the wish of the commission? Or no wish? of the commission?
Accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
So more seconded by Young to approve both meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay. I'll open it up for any discussion. Anybody have any discussion?
Just a quick
Joe.
follow-up question for the March 17th meeting. There was the conditional release of the ENS bond based on a site. And this can come up under other business if you want, or because it's the minutes. Just
No,
thought
we
I
can pick it up, sir. Sort of.
just want to see if there was a inspection of grounds at Bentley Field to release the bond.
Yes.
Ashley?
Yep, I went out
And everything was fine?
Everything was fine.
So
There was
you
no
had
building.
approval to release the
Yes.
bond? Okay.
Yep.
It's not, but there was no building, it was just that the grounds were not.
Yeah,
Okay,
disturbed, yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I think it took you all day and part of the night, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had to
Because I
put
saw
for some
somebody
overtime.
walking out there with a flashlight. I assume it was still you,
Yeah, yep,
the official town car.
yes,
So, okay. But thank you for doing that, Ashley.
sure.
So, does anyone have anything else on these 2 minutes? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll then. Joe Adaletta,
Hi,
Mark Blackburn,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
I'll need to abstain due to my absence from the March 17th meeting. I'm
okay.
sorry, the March 31st meeting.
Okay, so we will note the abstention. Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Jeff Marcotte,
Aye.
David Morse,
Aye.
Doug Porter,
Abstained.
okay. Dwight, oh no, Timothy Young. That so passes. And congratulations, Amy, your unended streak of your minutes passing continues. Wow. Maybe you'll set a record. Takes us right down the line then to non-residential zoning permits. This is agenda item 5A, 292-169 ATC Farms LLC, Nicole Bovino. I'll ask the questions that I normally ask, although I know the answers. So let's put this on the record. Nevertheless, Ashley, I think you reviewed this.
Mhm.
It's a complete application.
Yep.
And the fees were paid.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you. So that way we have it on the record.
sure.
Anything from your viewpoint, staff viewpoint?
Nope, it's basically the same as Rusty Valley, so I have no
Okay.
issue with it.
Okay. Are you here for this? Welcome to the commission meeting. You're not obligated to say anything. You don't have to. We won't hold it against you. We'll give you an opportunity if you so wish. If you do, just please state your name for the record because we have to maintain the audio recording. Thank you. Is there anything you wish to say about this? Okay. I'll open it to commission. What, Joe, do you have something?
just a quick question for the applicant, if they don't mind indicating what does ATC stand for? It doesn't sound like a name, anybody's initials, but
If you could just state your name for the record. please.
Absolutely. My name is Sean Mark and ATC stands for Around the Clock.
Oh, okay.
thank you.
Quite welcome.
And I'll just note for the record that you are looking to bundle in the sign with this application. So we'll note that because we do allow that. Otherwise, separately, it's a whole different permit, but you have to go through the ZBO office. So we made that change years ago to make things easier. So we'll note it for the record, so it's clear. And anything with the signs, you just have to talk with Ashley to make certain it complies with the sign regulations. So does anyone have any other questions on this? Anything on Zoom, Doug or Nancy? Okay,
Just that it's good to see another business coming into town, so welcome.
yep,
I'm happy to be.
welcome.
Move to accept the application as presented.
Second. This is 5A. That was you, right, John? So motion by Joe Adaletta, second by David Morse to approve the non-residential zoning permit as presented. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackburn,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
Aye.
Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Jeff Marcotte,
Aye.
David Morse, Doug Porter,
Aye.
and Timothy Young. I take it so passes. Congratulations. Any type of post-approval stuff Ashley can easily take care of for you, but welcome. Always good to have folks part of the local business. So we wish you all the best. Okay. Can you, Nancy, Doug, and Sid, can you hear us online? Delia was just making some changes so we don't have an echo.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, it's coming from over there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. The next is agenda item 5B, 7 Beaches Lane, number 10, Achieve Speech and Language Services. Rachel Maurer, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize.
We couldn't attend tonight, so that's why there's a little write-up at the end. But it's
Okay.
pretty self-explanatory. I will just note, she didn't put yes for a sign on her application, but she's going to change that and add a sign for the application.
So we're going to note that for tonight, that a sign is going to be bundled in with this
Yes.
application.
Yep.
So we'll note that this is actually going to be a yes.
Yep.
So would that be noted? Because otherwise, you're right, if it's not on there and you don't note it.
Yeah.
She has to come in for a separate permit.
Right.
I think a separate state fee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll ask the same questions again. I know the answers already, but we'll have it on the record. This is a complete application.
Yes.
And the fees are paid. Anything from your viewpoint as
Nope.
CEO?
Nope, it looks good to me.
Okay. I'll open it up to the commission. Any questions, comments from the commission? Okay, what's the will of the commission? Is that you, Tim?
Yeah.
So motion by David Moore, seconded by Timothy Young to approve this non-residential zoning permit as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Mark Blackburn.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett. Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. Aye. Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morse.
Aye.
Doug Porter.
Aye.
And Timothy Young. Aye. That so passes. We'll do whatever with them.
Yep.
Give them the wonderful news.
I will do that.
Thank you. That takes care of those. Unless there's an objection, just so that we don't run out of time, depending on how long we go with affordable housing tonight, we do have to take care of some of these other business items real quick. So why don't we just take care of those and skip up to the CEO reports and go through up to adjournment. We can square those away real quickly, and then everything else will be able to be just for the affordable housing plan for the rest of the evening. I just asked if there was an objection to doing it. So if there's no objection, we'll just note that it was without objection. We don't technically have to then do a motion for it, unless you really want to. Okay. So CEO reports. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything from your standpoint, Ashley.
I think we can just discuss Supreme Sheds. Finally got a hold of the owner. It's I guess we kind of talked about it, so kind of just a final decision from the commission, but after reviewing everything, the owners of Scranton Shops never filed their special permit in Mylar. So that kind of like took us for a loop. I did get legal advice, but we came to the conclusion that it seems as though they should be able to just modify the non-residential permit they have because it falls under a commercial use, which is what the property is. It's zoned as commercial. And it has nothing, it doesn't relate to this special permit because the special permit was just to add a house and make the property mixed use. So that's my opinion. I'm open for discussion.
I'll just speak to it because I was included in on the conversations. I know Rich replied.
Yep.
Because we wanted to make certain we had a legal. So there's two different issues here that are related. Before the special permit, there was no residential there. Just the businesses doing what they were doing. The special permit, I think was what, 2018?
18, yeah.
Was to allow residential to be built, a house.
Right.
That was the special permit. It wasn't about anything with the businesses directly. It was just to allow mixed use. We approved it. What ended up happening is that they never filed their plans. So they're beyond the 90 days, where our regulations say that if you don't file it, it shall become void. It turns out that my understanding is they don't want to pursue that anymore. They're
as a
not.
residence. They don't want to pursue.
They
a
don't want the residents there. They bought elsewhere evidently. So basically, we'll deal with whatever to,
Yeah.
it's actually, I think already just, I think it's just technically voided. Do we have to vote on that at some point? Although we haven't received,
You do that for subdivisions.
right, but this we don't, because,
You have to do that for
yeah, because what our understanding is that our regulations say if you don't submit these things within 90 days, it shall be void.
It's not effective.
Right, so in a sense, that special permit, and I don't know if they sent you anything in writing.
They sent like a quick email that said they don't wish to build the house, so.
So what's gonna happen then is they don't wanna pursue it, that approval is just done with. So now there's no special permit active on the property, because there's gonna be no house. If somebody in the future wants to put a house there, they have to come in for a new special permit for mixed use, the way our regulations read. The other aspect then is the business permit that we approved for Supreme Sheds was a non-residential zoning permit. It wasn't special permit. We did say at the time that that if they wanted to do manufacturing, because what they had told us was they wanted it just for displays, and that's where a business office is located. But if they wanted to do manufacturing, they'd have to come in to modify their permit. And so what's turned out and why Ashley had to get involved further was it was brought to our attention that they've been manufacturing. So, and you've spoken with them, and Rich has weighed in also to say, from a legal point of view, it's a modification of a non-residential zoning permit. If they now want to ask us to approve manufacturing there. There's no special permit issues whatsoever. So that's kind of where it stands because of these two related issues on that property.
Well, I thought because the activity on that property was retail, getting a non-residential permit for retail use would be fine, as long as it stayed retail, and that's what the commission agreed to. Outside of building a few demo sheds, it would essentially be a retail operation. So how is this changing now if they want to manufacture there? Is manufacturing a different designation than retail? And wouldn't that require a special permit?
I'll open up to, is there anything you want to say on the subject, Delia, or anything, Ashley? I know Rich had weighed in. My understanding was Rich had said it could fall under a non-residential zoning permit modification.
Because the property is zoned commercial, which I forget the exact definition, but
We don't have
basically,
a commercial zone.
well, commercial use. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
So the definition states anything for profit. So it doesn't necessarily say manufacturing or not manufacturing. It just says employment. There's like three words for it, but employment, basically having a business for profit.
Did you have something, Delia, you wanted to add?
There have been other businesses in town that were retail that were allowed to make things. There, at least one of the Neps businesses over the years have made things and sold them. And there, for a time, there was a business in the Little River Plaza that I think was run by Neps, and they made things and sold them. And there's been other businesses that have made stuff and sold them, and they were considered retail.
Our definition for commercial use, Ashley is right, an occupation, employment, or enterprise that is carried on for profit, period. That's what we say about it.
What page is it?
That's on page 13 in my regs, definitions.
This is the definition.
And I believe,
And the, oh, sorry.
I believe Rich, when he had reviewed this, because you had asked him the opinion, because it was getting a little confusing because we had to deal with that special permit, and what was happening with it.
Yep.
He felt that it, if I'm correct, I thought he felt it would fall under modifying the non-residential zoning permit, not requiring a new special permit.
Right.
Because of the way the regulations are written, how things are defined.
And the definition of non-residential includes commercial uses. So it kind of all ties together, at least in my opinion.
And Delia, you're telling us that there's been examples prior where we have done that.
Yes.
And there's been retail manufacturing on the same
I don't think they were labeled manufacturing, but they
manufacturing.
understood that they were making things there, even if the commission didn't label them that way.
Well, then I guess I go back to what wasn't clear in our decision when we approved a retail application to
It's been a
say,
while since I watched it, Joe, but I went back and watched the meeting,
yes,
and I can't tell you for sure word for word, but we did not ever say in the motion that they could not build sheds there. We discussed it. It was in the, there was some in discussion that we didn't want that, but it was not in the motion. To my, the best of my recollection, that we didn't specify that they could not build sheds there in the motion.
Yeah, I think the motion was for display and
Correct.
they could use up to 1,200 square feet, I think, for the displays.
right,
But they did agree that they were not going to do manufacturing.
Right,
Right.
and they'd have to
And
come back.
They'd have to come back if they wanted manufacturing, but they've been doing manufacturing there, so
yeah,
that's why
so
it's coming
was
back
it
up.
just ignored what the discussion was here at
I
the commission?
think that after watching the whole thing, he said he wanted to build some display sheds there. If they sold, he'd have to replace them. And, where it went awry and what they don't remember or you remember, you know, I think it just needs to be addressed somehow.
I also think the business took off a little bit more than they were expecting. Not that I'm not giving a, right or wrong. I'm just saying, I think it's growing more than they thought. And that it's easier for them to manufacture on site than at some people's homes, the way that
But
they're
that
set
seemed
up.
the intention all
Yeah.
along.
There was some discussion, not that it was part of the motion, but there was some discussion that perhaps they could do the manufacturing behind their building or away from the road. Maybe they could build them not in a place that would be also display, but maybe they could build them, in the back behind a fence or something. And then they'd still be able to sell them, but maybe they wouldn't all be on display if that's the issue. That wasn't part of the decision, but it was part of the discussion.
But again, the owner did agree that he wasn't going to do any manufacturing and understood to come back to
That
us.
was
So
weird.
the issue is now if they want to do, if they are doing manufacturing and they want to continue with it, if they're being successful and they would like to be able to do that with their business model, the issue would be they would just need to send in an application. But right now it would look to be a non-residential zoning permit modification. Seems to be where that would be going. It's being brought up to the commission, for us to be aware of it, because it is an item for enforcement that has been looked into and, in a sense, adjudicated. So, but my understanding, Ashley, is that they're looking to submit
Yeah.
some type of
Yes,
application.
they said they will, whenever,
us.
whatever the commission decides.
But I
They
guess the
will
issue
submit an
is,
application.
it seems to be from what we're looking at and what Rich had opined in a sense about, that it would be a modifying the non-residential zoning permit, as opposed to they have to now submit a special permit.
So if they submit the application, does that come before this
Yes.
commission?
Yeah.
It does.
Or is it-
Comes before us because we have to deal with those non-residential zoning permits. So they would complete an application and submit it to us.
I think Sid has something to.
Sid?
I apologize for not having my zoning ordinance with me, but are the requirements for a special permit at least similar, if not comparable, to this non-residential zoning permit modification? In other words, will we be receiving the same amount of information to review and make a decision?
Well, to modify a non-residential zoning permit follows all the provisions of an actual non-residential zoning permit. So there would be that same amount of stuff that would be required of it. A special permit has a bit more provisions, but the other is we do have language in these regs that say if for any reason, and we have to justify the reason, especially if we have statutory authority, we could ask for any additional information we felt was needed for any particular application. I mean, it's not without limit, but again, it has to be within reason and within our statutory authority, although our statutory authority is very broad, given the State Enabling Act. So some of those provisions for special permit wouldn't apply. It would be the non-residential zoning permit that applies. So for example, there'd be no public hearing, it'd be a public meeting. And we have a number of permit requirements here and a number of things that are required here for non-residential zoning permits. Again, it's not as involved for special permits. However, we do have language in here that says there's a number of provisions that if they're not applicable, they don't have to submit. We agree. But I don't think you need as detailed of a map plan, I think, or some other things. But we have to go through the regs to see exactly what they have to submit. Did you have something further, Steve?
Well, my recollection of this initial application was that it evolved during their presence before us from a retail office, which was the primary use, and almost, oh, by the way, we'd like to construct a few sheds simply for display purposes. And that, as the discussion continued, to me, it was clear it was a manufacturing operation. I don't know if I had the manufacturing definition in front of me at the time, but it seemed to fit that bill much more clearly than what they were presenting. So I don't know, I just have some concerns about us, the commission, providing a thorough review of something that is quite different from what the initial application is for.
Well, one thing we do, if we were to require a modification of a non-residential zoning permit, there is a provision here that any other information or format of information may be required as deemed necessary by the CEO or the commission for determination. So if there's additional stuff we feel we need, we can ask for it. Again, we'd have to state if we feel that it's within our authority to, but again, our authority is very broad for state law. So if we felt there was additional things that we needed, we can certainly have that discussion and ask for it. I guess the issue is, does the commission feel that it's a modification of the required of the existing non-residential zoning permit, or do we need to go through a special permit process? Special permit process is a lot more involved, requires the public hearing, a lot of additional stuff. Versus we've already granted a non-residential zoning permit. Would it be the more straightforward way of modifying that and having that discussion? And again, if we want additional information, we can ask for it. But that's what's
concern I would have is if that business actually grew so large down there, and having them come back to us and being able to put some sort of limitations on growth. Just envision a lumber yard, where it's nothing but gravel, dust, forklifts moving things all over the place, piles of lumber everywhere, because they've become so massive, and they're making 2 a day or something to that effect. I don't know, is that in that neck of the woods would be, so is this an opportunity to say, hey, we're happy that you're doing well. Our hats off to you, but there is a limitation to what we can do in that spot, where you may want to step up, to a bigger pair of pants or something, if you're going to grow, so to speak.
if we did it as a special permit, did it as a modification of a non-residential zoning permit, we can put modifications and conditions on either type of permit.
Even on a non-residential permit?
We've done that before.
I just think we should, I don't know if we want to have them get a special permit, because then the special permit is there, it goes with the land, it's there forever. If we
Right.
can modify,
Yeah,
I think we should modify the business plan and restrict that through that step rather than having a special permit, because then that's there and we can't, he can move out and somebody else can come in and.
If we could extend what we already have to a level that says, that, if you seek this level, we're good with it. But if you're gonna go above that level, if you're gonna be, your operation's gonna grow, then we're gonna have to require a special permit.
Or we have the
Do that,
industrial.
and then we have an opportunity there to refuse that, because we just don't think that that's gonna be the right place to be doing something like that, You need an industrial park type of an area.
Doug, then Mark?
Well, I think we already have a restriction on the amount of activity on the site. We've restricted it, I think it was to 1,200 square feet area. So I think there is a restriction. He can't be building hundreds of them. He can't have a total between his displays and what he's building. anything that exceeds 1,200 square feet.
That is a good point, Doug, that we did put that as a condition. So it's an existing condition that limits how much can be used there.
And,
Well,
you know, my,
that it was retail only.
Correct. Yeah.
you know,
That's correct.
my original concern with the project was exactly what's happening right now. And that's one of the reasons I think we looked at that 1,200 square foot restriction. You know, if he's building, and basically most of his sheds are running between 100 or 200 square feet. So he's got 6 to 8 sheds there. Either they're under construction or they're for sale displays. And I don't think that's a tremendous impact. But I was afraid exactly what's happened is what's going to happen is he's selling them quicker than he can make them. So he's constantly building new ones. But I'm not sure there's a detrimental impact on the community.
Mark?
It kind of the same thing Doug said. I remember that 1,200 square foot. And so if we can hold them to that, if they're manufacturing and shipping them out, but they can only have so many under construction or on display at a time. You know, is that, instead of like Tim says, it's not gonna, we won't fill the whole yard up building in the big piles of lumber, which we don't want. But if they can only have so much of a footprint of buildings, they'll build the correct size ones at the time, instead of having too many on display. And then they won't be able to manufacture more.
And we could certainly, if we so determine, keep that restriction in place for square footage. You know, they can ask to expand it. We can certainly make a determination, you know, to
I
say,
think
we're
we
not gonna
wanna
change
see a
that
site
condition.
plan as to where they want to do that.
Right.
You know, if they said, well, you know, we could step back another 50 feet and it would give us, you know, display and, okay. But, you know, I think I'd like to see a site plan as to how they plan to do that.
Well, they're renting space in there, correct?
Right.
Yes,
That's owned by somebody else, so,
correct.
you know, perhaps maybe they could go back to the property owner and see if they could do their manufacturing, you know, out back or something. I don't know. My concern is that, you know, we're gonna put a limitation on a business in town that's prospering, that's doing good. That's my concern. You know, I hear what you guys are saying and it makes sense, but at the same time, I don't want to see a business get hurt either. So if we could, I don't know where we proceed here, writing them a letter, asking them to come in, talk with us, or Julia, maybe you have something on it.
Delia?
I was thinking that if you are concerned that if they get too large, that's a business that would need a special permit. So you require them to prepare one. That's a significant expense, but you have concerns that that won't be a good location. Perhaps you can invite them to come in and discuss the concerns, because that would be a non-binding discussion, but you're giving them some feedback that if that, you're projecting their future growth, if that's not a good site for their future plans, maybe they could seek another place before they spend the money on preparing this special permit. I mean, there already is a survey there, so if they went back to that company, it would save money, but it's still gonna cost money to prepare the site, the survey, which would be the most expensive part of the special permit application. But we know there's an elevation difference between the road and the parking lot. And if they're, like you said, they're driving around with lumber trucks and forklifts and everything, that site might not be suitable for that kind of traffic, in addition to customers that might want to go there to look at the shed. Because you're probably not going to load a shed in your truck and drive away, because then how do you get it out of your truck? But people may go there to look at them, and then there's other businesses on that property, and customers will go to those businesses. So if their concern is that it's not the right place, before any decision is made, before they spend money on a survey, maybe you can invite them to come in and go over what the concerns are. Not that you're trying to chase them out of town, but that you're encouraging them to plan their future expansion in a way that works best for them.
Yeah, I mean,
And why is
obviously,
investment?
obviously that site is doing them well. Obviously, people are driving by there saying, hey, wow, look at that, look at those sheds. You know, and I think that that's why they're they're doing so well because they have the visibility that they need. But I do understand what you're saying too, you know, we could have traffic issues there. Coming out of that
Alternative-
driveway, I don't know if it's got the best clarity and, you know, it's a state road, it's a highway.
Alternative could be they can have a website showing oodles of pictures of all the sheds that they can build,
They do.
have a limited actual physical sheds on display, and then maybe they could seek approval to do the construction on a different property that would be more suitable to all that traffic with the larger than normal trucks, you know, delivering lumber, and then if they load up a couple trucks on a flatbed with a forklift and drive off to deliver them, those are larger than the average homeowner's vehicle that will be going in and out of the property to buy the other company's products.
Well, they're building them, but some of them they then take down.
Yeah.
So a number of them, they just build on site. Because I've seen some of them I've seen them build some of them, then I've also seen them take some of them down. So I don't know what they do as far as,
But they trailer them out too. They just.
Yeah,
they
so they're
build them on
doing it
site, put them
now.
on a trailer.
they're certainly doing that now. We can ask them to come in for a preliminary discussion and learn more from them and see where we stand with regards to, you know.
See that map and see how 1,200 feet affects it.
You know,
Does
is
it look
a,
like a swimming pool in the middle of it? Does it look like it takes up the whole thing?
we can certainly see, they can show us on a map. Do we want to then let them know to have a prelim discussion with us?
Can I
and-
make a suggestion? I would have them put in their modification to a non-residential permit for next month's meeting. And if you guys, after you talk to them, decide that you still want to go that route, at least their application is in and they don't have to wait another month. Otherwise, you can always push it off on the agenda to the following month if you want to discuss it further or need more information. Only because I'd hate to hold them up when they're kind of already doing it anyways.
Yeah, they're not stopping.
yeah.
Right?
So if we can get the ball rolling quicker, that's just my suggestion.
At this point, are they breaking any rules or?
I mean, they're
Technically,
breaking their
not
non-residential
complying with the
permit.
Right.
Technically.
And I can go back to them and tell them some of the concerns you have tonight, so they can come prepared. They could have the non-residential modification prepared, and then you guys can still decide if you want something else or more information.
Doug, you have your hand back up?
Yes. I think we need to put them on notice that they have restrictions on their permit right now, and that we expect them to maintain those restrictions, which to me is that not to exceed the 1,200 square feet. I don't particularly care for people that just ignore their permits and continue to do things thinking, well, we'll wait until someone sends me a letter of non-compliance. Here we have, I just think we need to reinforce that there is a restriction that they can't exceed 1,200 square feet. And then if, yes, invite them in to talk about a special permit or modify their existing permit. But I think we need to make sure that they understand there's a limit of how much they can do, whether it's construction or whether it's for sale. There is a restriction so that we don't get into this, that they have 10 or 12 or 13 of them under construction. And just make sure that they understand there is a permit.
And that even though, Doug, they're gonna apply to modify, they still have to comply with the terms of the current permit because nothing's been approved for modification yet.
Correct.
And that you can relate back to them,
Mhm.
that they do have to comply with the terms of the current permit. And they can certainly apply to us to modify, but the current permit is the current permit.
And I'm running into this, another issue with another permit that we actually have for Rusty Relic. And guess what? I'm involved in the construction business, so I hear things and I understand they're looking to expand into their barn. Is that part of the permit that they have for that site? It's sometimes I think people get these permits and they think we're all set, we can just do what we want. But there are restrictions with all of these permits. And I would ask that someone review Rusty Relic also, so that we don't have a similar event a couple of months from now.
Yeah, they were not allowed to use the barn for retail. I know they were thinking of wanting to fix the barn to maintain it. I don't know if they're looking to, at some point, come to us to ask to modify that permit. But I know they were thinking of trying to fix the barn in general, but that can certainly be looked into. What are the plans? But you're right, Doug,
Well-
that barn technically was not allowed to be used for retail. They didn't propose it, and it wasn't anything. In fact, it didn't even go to the, that was also discussed with the Historic District Commission.
I think
The
they
barn
made
was-
it clear they were planning to use that for storage.
Correct, but not for
I
like,
think they are gonna renovate, but, because I went out there a few months ago.
Wasn't there some restriction on the amount of articles they could put out in the yard
Yeah.
too? It wasn't
Yeah.
Yeah, the articles that were out in the yard were supposed to be for decorative purposes only and not for sale.
But there's a lot of stuff out in the yard.
and they've been very successful.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing it up, and not to confuse this issue, but just that the,
There's one thing, Doug, just one thing that Tim was just finishing, so I
They
don't
need a
want to.
comply with the permit, and if that was mentioned, that there was a limitation to what could be in the yard, then obviously everything in the yard can't be for sale. It's way on.
Doug?
yeah, and I don't want to complicate the issue here, but I want to bring them both together in that we may have to have the zoning agent emphasize to these people that they have active permits and they can't change. They may want to do more things, but they need to come back and get approval for that before they do them. And I think we have that situation possibly starting here with the sheds. And I also think you're going to have a similar situation with Rusty Relic. So I think it's important for us to be proactive and tell these people up front, they can't make these changes without coming back and amending their current permit.
That is a valid point. We've always talked about upholding the regulations, and that includes upholding permits and limitations of permits. So I guess that's stuff you can check on, Ashley. So what does the commission feel about Supreme Sheds? Do we want to have them with Ashley's suggestion? I think hers is reasonable. Have them, they're going to need to talk with us anyway. We can have them prepare a modification, give us the information that's needed. We'll be having a discussion with them. If we feel there's more information or there's something more in scope we're going to need or start to do, we would have that discussion with them. But at least then, as opposed to a prelim discussion next month, and then they'd have to come back in June to us, move the ball forward for May and see where we are, while at the same time they're told if they're exceeding the provisions of their permit, they need to stop.
I think Doug brought up some good points, and maybe that's something as a commission we need to remind people when they come in for special permits, or we put restrictions on them. We need to remind them that if they're gonna make changes, they need to come back to us. Just kind of, reinforce that a little bit. But, yeah, sounds pretty good.
Do we want to go forward with Ashley's suggestion, the non-residential zoning permit modification?
That sounds reasonable.
And that they should attend, not just submit an application or not be here, but need to be here so we can have discussion.
Mhm.
And then flesh things out with them. And, again, if we feel there's additional things we need, we do have that provision to allow it. As long as it's within our statutory authority and we feel that it's justified to ask for something additional, we can do it. And at times we have in the past for certain things. Okay. That would be for the May, was that 19th
I think so.
meeting?
Yep.
If I got the dates right. So, okay.
And if I could just add on that, because I think this is an opportunity for the commission for continuous improvement in its language. As Jeffrey Marcotte was kind of pointing out, it wasn't fully clear that the permit restricted the permit to only retail. There was maybe some lack of clarity as to manufacturing. Just going back, how do we word things to make it clear to the applicant and to our documentation what our intentions are? It's important, and this is a particular case of Supreme Sheds. I think Rusty Relics might be another one, and there have been others where maybe the extent of the permit or the details of the permit aren't clear enough, and then the applicant starts just interpreting what they can do based on that.
Well, that's a good point. We can certainly clarify, as much as we need to.
Yeah.
I think I thought it was clear to them about
I thought
not
it was clear too.
manufacturing. They agreed, because I know there was a boatload of discussion about it, but it can't hurt to, clarify things so that way they know, but it's also helpful for the commission because let's say they come back in 5 years and we find out they're manufacturing and we're not on the commission, and other members who weren't there and having to make a decision now can look back
But
at the
were they
detail.
allowed to, they were allowed to manufacture the,
Demonstration.
the
Display.
displays. And so if that's what they, they're displaying it and then selling, but they can't, so they cannot sell anything from that property once they build it.
Right.
That one, they're stuck. They can't build another model that has to stay.
It's
They build
supposed to be
one,
displayed.
it's a permanent structure there
Well,
now.
they can remove it and put a different display up.
So that's what they're doing.
No.
If they sell it,
But they're getting into outright manufacturing up there.
so
So it's kind of a.
that's,
Yeah.
it is, so it's,
Okay.
it's a little confusing because if they can manufacture a display building and then they disassemble that building and reconstruct it on another site, and then they're manufacturing another display model, they're within what we
They may or
discussed.
may not be, right? So I think
That
they're
was not the
really,
intent of the
It's- that's
discussion,
right,
you
that's
know,
right.
So that's the language.
they're really getting into
Language.
a lot more manufacturing up there than displaying. Very much so.
It's only displayed for a couple hours.
Right.
Right, quote unquote display. Well, so we'll see then about the modification, really encourage that they need to be here.
Yeah.
To discuss things, and then we can have this discussion with them. Ask them questions, things like that, and see where we are. Okay,
And as a future topic, I think we may need to define manufacturing because we don't have anything under M for manufacturing. And using an example of, making pot holders in your house is manufacturing versus buildings as manufacturing and considering them the same thing. Or
Birdhouses, yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
it's not necessarily this, well, we don't have it in our definition.
no, but we could, I mean, we tend to like to use this definition book,
Yeah,
which says establishments engaged in the mechanical or chemical transformation of materials or substances into new products, including the assembling of component parts, the creation of products, and the blending of materials such as oils, plastics, resins, or liquors. Whoa. What a definition. But yes, we don't have a manufacturing definition, so
Right.
perhaps we can look into that. Okay. We'll make a note of that. We need a manufacturing definition. That's a good point, Joe. If we don't have it, we can always,
yeah, because
See
I
which
don't
one
want to
we
live
like.
by example saying, well, this NEPS manufactures something, so anybody who manufactures something, whether it's, a tabletop item or a whole building, is still manufacturing. I don't think that's quite the same.
but we can look at some definitions. I don't think we have to go hog wild with it. We can also see what a few other towns use for manufacturing. And we can always cycle it back at some point. I'll make a note of it that it's on our list. Okay. Anything else with regards to ZEO stuff?
Actually, Donna Copeland, where is 629 Hummingbird Lane?
Oh, it's in Solaire.
So I was gonna ask, I've never heard of Hummingbird Lane.
Yeah.
Are you gonna go and check out Hummingbird Lane? or no?
Not me.
I was gonna say, wait till it's less windy and a little warmer. but-
No, don't do that.
When you're out there, you can visit the castle.
I'll
So,
just go by the castle.
okay. So I learned something new where Hummingbird Lane is. Okay. Are you gonna let us know what the other lanes and roads are up there? in
I sure
Solana?
can.
The names?
I'll get them all for you.
Yeah, why don't we find out and see what some of them are named? Interesting. All right. Anything else? Budget review and bills. We have our listing of the budget. I know we're continuing to be reminded by the Director of Finance's office that, we're getting over our P and Z notices, but I remind them that when we have to put notices in, especially things that are required by law, we have to put them in.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, we're not overall with our entirety of our budget. And I've said this before at meetings, even if we go a little over, We don't go by over much, and we have a very small budget anyway, so it's not an issue at all. And I can't remember the last time we ever went over budget, but I remember we did once for a little bit, and the Board of Finance had no issue. So it really, every time I'm reminded of it by town hall, I just say, okay, well, we have no choice. We have to post these notices. There's nothing we can do about it. Delia?
Maybe you can remind them that when it comes to an application, those fees that you charge are meant to cover.
Yes, I have.
So only the notices you're doing for
Yep.
your own commission business are not covered by application fees.
But I'm not worried about it because overall our budget is pretty small and we're really not running any issue.
Oh, I think next year we should quadruple the budget and not be any issues.
Well, actually, the proposed budget for the fiscal year, we upped because they cut us. And I reminded them that if you cut our budget,
We'll be
which
over.
they
budget.
did, we go over budget. So we went back up and we went a little bit higher, not by much. So I did remind them that, hey, this is why we're over budget on notices, because you cut us. So perhaps you shouldn't have cut us a couple $100 or whatever, because this is what happens. So yes, we did propose going back up.
So in the past couple of years, have we had a surplus in any of the other accounts for P and Z?
Yeah, the legal items are in a separate budget. So yeah, we don't tend to go over.
Yeah, so.
It's not an issue.
So can a transfer be made from one of the other accounts?
It is, it's not an issue, yeah, because it's the overall budget, but I keep on getting reminded that we're going over on the notices, and I'm like, but we're not over overall,
Yeah.
so it's a non-issue. So as long as if we're gonna bust the town if we go over by a couple $100. So,
Well, I don't
so,
know, I heard you got a big increase in your salary.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff,
yes, Doug?
you may have to remind the people in the finance office that it's illegal in the state of Connecticut to charge impact fees. If the zoning fees are in excess of what we need to pay our bills, then it's considered an impact fee, and that's illegal.
Right, and actually, whenever we've done our review of the land use fees, we've never been over or under by, it's basically been zero sum, but you're correct. We're gonna be looking at things this year, as far as how that plays out this year, and then review 2022 to see where we stand with that. But, all of our analyses have been, we don't overcharge, but you're right, Doug. The town can't be there trying to make a profit, off of it. So, and we've been very mindful of that with the land use fees, that we're not there to make a profit. So, since we're not in that business. Otherwise, we still have the POCD money. That's there. That's not a problem. Correspondence actually let us know that we did receive a telecommunications, was a tower notice. Where is it located?
40 Sherman Road.
Okay. We don't usually make copies of the entire document because some of those can be massively long. We just get notified by the siting council and the telecommunication company. We don't have a lot of jurisdiction because the siting council does. If anyone wants to see what it is they're proposing, Ashley has it and can always send out the cover letter if need be. But we just literally got it, so that's why it's noted.
Yeah, the cover letter would often come in the packet, just so we would.
Yeah,
know
this
that
just
it's
came out.
being-
This just got
Okay.
received. So Ashley wanted to make certain that we were aware of it. So if you want, Ashley, was it just a simple cover letter?
Yeah, it's not very long.
If you want, just email it out to everybody.
Sure.
If people want to comment upon it, you got to comment to the siting council. I think they're located in New Britain. So I think that's where their office is. That takes us then to agenda item 6, which is update to the town's affordable housing plan. A couple of things. We continue to do our public outreach and remind everybody that we're continuing to work on affordable housing. We've been doing that steadily for quite some time and been very proactive in that regard. You can see by the large number of surveys we got that we've been doing that. Very much out there, letting everybody know that we're continuing to work on this. We do have a deadline of June 1st. That's a hard and fast deadline by the state. Unfortunately, the state has not changed that deadline. There's been nothing that they're going to change it, and no legislation proposed to move that back. In fact, it did come up at the Planning and Development Committee, and it got shut down pretty quickly to move that back. So as far as the legislature is concerned, it wants that June 1st deadline hard and fast. So
Do we know
Um,
how anybody know how other towns are doing, or other towns completed it? Or they-
Some have, and a lot of them are still working on it, is my understanding. But some have already done it. But I don't know the full tally, but from what I heard from a couple of organizations that have been active on this, a lot of towns are still, like us,
Doing the
working
last
on it
ones,
and
yeah.
trying, looking to get it done by June 1st. So the state's gonna receive a gigantic batch, I think, in May. So, one thing is, because we have that hard and fast deadline, we want to make certain we don't wait till the last minute to get things finalized. One thing I'm going to propose, and Adelia did send out the updated schedule, and thank you for doing that, Adelia, about our timeline is, one thing I'm going to propose to the commission is we don't need a public hearing. We don't need that for a couple of reasons. One is the state statute, and I actually have it here, states you're not required to do a public hearing on this. I don't think we need one because quite frankly, we've been notifying people left and right. We're going to continue to notify people. And all of our meetings are open in public. And these documents are available. The other is if we have to do a public hearing, per the state law, we have to post whatever draft plan is going to be brought forward on our website and have it available at least 35 days before the public hearing. So if we were to say we want a public hearing, we can't start between now and then changing the draft because then that wouldn't be up in time. That 35 days pushes us a lot of time close to June 1st. So I would recommend that we not do a public hearing. I don't think it's necessary. It would also burn up time that we need to finalize the document. I think we're doing fine, quite frankly, with our public meetings. We got a lot of survey input. I know all boards and agencies in town have been notified. It is their opportunity to, to speak with us or not speak with us. But I know the selectmen have been made aware of this a number of times. And we'll continue to remind people of our meetings and what we're doing. Joe?
Is this draft plan that you're putting out, giving to us, Delia, also on the town's website for documents? So particularly if we can make a point of the fact that this draft plan has been available to the public for months, that helps, as well as having the meetings, open meetings and
That
surveys.
draft just went on.
Well, not this one, but you've been putting drafts on the
Yes,
website, so.
They have been. And people have been reminded when we notify people, here are our meetings, affordable housing still on the agenda. You can go to the website, you can see the agenda. If you want to do it by Zoom, here are the links, to get in by Zoom. The links have never changed. I think they're always the same.
Yeah.
And here are the documents. So they are readily available as opposed to having to mail these out every time to, the people. So I know you've been doing a good job getting it in, so that way it can be posted up. So unless people disagree, I would say we don't need to schedule a public hearing. But I'm open if people agree or disagree to that. But I think we're doing what we're doing. Joe?
I think in principle, it would be good to have one public hearing just to be as open and transparent as possible, but given the time constraints, I think that would be very hard to do. Plus the fact that, like you say, this has been posted online pretty regularly and meetings are available. So other than the fact that it's nice to at least be able to say that we've had a public hearing and invited the public in.
In a sense, we've been doing it
I
by
know.
default. We've been
Yeah.
inviting the public. We're going to continue to invite the public and anything internal, external to the town hall. So in a sense, we've kind of been doing that de facto, and all of our meetings are open and encouraging. We've had some members of the public attend at times. So some of them just to listen and hear what we've been talking about on the subject. So, and we got a lot of surveys in. So clearly some people, so I don't know if anybody else.
Morse is here tonight.
Right. So I don't know if anybody else, if there's no objection, then we won't schedule a public hearing, on the topic there. I know we do have some additional documents. I appreciate, Stuart, your coming. I know we've been reaching out and certainly wanting to continue to work with the Ag Commission. We reached out a number of times to other commissions. We haven't heard from them. So, we'll remind them once again if they wish to provide input or not. So, but thank you for coming tonight. So, and is there anything, Delia, you want to present to us? I don't think you need to go through every single page, but I think there's some things in green that are new.
Yeah. And I
So I don't
wanted
know,
go over the stuff that I handed
And I
out.
think there's some additional stuff. Yep, so if you wanted to go through that, we can. And you handed stuff out tonight, but I know we have 3 commissioners on
I'm going to
Zoom.
present it all on the screen.
Okay, and you'll get that stuff to them?
Yes,
And anybody, all the other commissioners not here?
right.
Okay, let us know if you can't see any of this on Zoom, okay?
Mr. Chairman, just a question, please.
Yeah.
You run a pretty tight ship here, so during this conversation, am I going to be allowed to speak and enter into the conversation? Or are you going to call on me when you're ready?
No, I mean, we have been encouraging you. I know as chair, I've reached out to you and I've been encouraging that we have the dialogue with our commissions. You can certainly, I just have to recognize you.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
no, you're not gonna just, we're not
When I
expecting you
quit the
to.
ship.
Yeah, we try to, because sometimes for certain things, we have to be formal on certain types of things. This is a little bit less formal than certain applications. So don't have an issue, with that, just let me know as we're going through, and it's the same we do with any of the
Can
commissioners,
you mute your
as
speaker?
far as,
Maybe that'll cut down.
stuff, discuss something like this. So, because it's not a formal application. So, but just let me know and happy to hear from you. So Delia, did you want to let us know what stuff you've given to us so we're all aware of the stuff and whatever we need to show on the screen, we can show on the screen?
Yes. I didn't do my sharing thing right. One moment.
Uh-oh. We were going to be testing you on it. You can do that for us. Do I have to let you unfold that and let you fail the test?
Do what you have to do.
I don't know if they'll care. Looks like you got it.
This is the revised multifamily housing map. When I took another look at the assessor data, I found lots more properties. And that has to do with how they're labeled in the assessor data. It's not always labeled like 2-family or 3-family or whatever. They have many, many columns in their data, and sometimes the different type of residential unit is listed in a different column. So I had to search each column to come up with the full list of housing units. And so the map only shows apartments 5 or more on the same property, 4-family units, condos, and senior housing. There are also 2-family and 3-family, and there are 8 mobile homes around town. And I think at the last meeting, or maybe you have it in your packet, I did address all the questions from the last meeting.
That's a memo that you issued on the 13th.
Okay, yeah.
And again, those who are on Zoom will get that stuff to you. I don't know, it looks like you addressed about, how does the American Community Survey consider a condominium? What is 1 unit attached versus a 1 unit detached dwelling? Research what land use statutes there are on mobile homes. What else was there? Assisting mobile homes in town. Reach out to area towns about mobile homes, a lot about mobile homes. And what is the definition of area median income versus median
Do
family
you
income?
want to discuss any of that? Does anyone have any questions on it?
We can go through, I don't know, did you want to, was this in the meeting packet, I believe? Was it, or this was in the meeting
was hoping it
packet?
was.
Yeah, so I think our commissioners who are on Zoom, I believe this was in your meeting packets. If you wanted to, Delia, I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of the stuff that Delia had gotten information on that we had asked her to get further information on. Because on some of the stuff we wanted clarified in the text. I
So
think,
if
right?
you have any question, I'm happy to go over. Otherwise, I was gonna move on.
Does anyone have any questions about some of the stuff we asked Delia to look into? I think it's in the text, Joe.
Yeah, just, I guess I'm not clear still on the single family attached versus single family detached. I know you have something spelled out there, but I really didn't. It didn't help me.
You're talking, Joe, about one
Question
unit
number 2,
attached,
yeah.
1 unit detached.
Right,
Okay,
because there was a graph here in the draft report showing, okay.
So that data came from the American Community Survey. This is how they've defined it. So single-family structures, including fully detached, semi-detached, which are semi-attached side by side, row houses, duplexes, quadruplexes, and townhouses. In order for attached units to be classified as single-family structures, each unit must be separated by ground to roof wall, have a separate heating system, have individual meters for public utilities, and have no units located above or below.
Do you want to put this up on the screen? 'Cause I don't think you have a copy if you wanted to see this.
One moment.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Okay, okay. That's fine. Did that answer, Joe, or is
Well,
it still?
yeah, I certainly read through that.
So when you have
But-
like a 3 or 4 family and they're in one structure and maybe some of them are side by side and some are above, that doesn't count.
Is that a condominium?
No, that would be an apartment house. But if you have what we think of as condos, but are what are referred to in other places as townhouses, they are their own unit from ground floor to roof, and they're just next to each other. We think of those as condos because that's how many condos in our area have been built. Other places they call them townhomes. But I suppose condos could be in a different configuration.
Did you have something, Stu?
Yeah, I know, I was confused initially, because in looking through the material, affordable housing is deed restricted, according to the definition. And to my understanding, any apartments within town are not affordable housing. They might be attainable housing, as you coined a phrase, and one of your things I think is wonderful, but we look at affordable housing as deed restricted, and we're not in Hartford or New Britain or someplace where it is applicable to the county, to the town of Woodstock.
And that's the point we've been making for quite some time, is a lot of these rules the state has. The 830G statute for affordable housing is quite old and hasn't been reasonably or meaningful updated in a long time. And a lot of these things that the state defines as affordable and wants towns to do can be very difficult for a rural town like Woodstock to do. Hence why there's been a lot of pushback in the legislature to say, why do you keep pushing your strict definitions when a lot of places can't meet it? You need to really look what is more flexible for affordable and attainable, as opposed to trying to pigeonhole everything into these really tight definitions.
Okay, and I guess it was brought on by Joe's question. Really, the condominiums are not affordable housing. They don't fit under the affordable housing. They're not deed restricted.
According to the state. However, again, a lot of pushback has been, yes, the state has these definitions, but what is also realistically attainable? And that's part of what we're looking at as well.
Well, we're
Right.
talking about affordable and attainable.
Correct.
I think for the agricultural industry within town, there's probably some opportunity for the town to get into some deed restricted housing to support them. But I'm thinking that all this conversation, and it's a wonderful document, we've got a lot of apartments within town, but they were all built back before land use and zoning. And those are attainable housing, they're not affordable housing.
And that's the point that we've been making for a long time, including last year and this year. I know I've testified to this. The state really trying to pigeonhole its definitions of affordable and wondering why over all these years, the affordable housing statute isn't meeting its goal, is because so many towns like Woodstock can never meet those marks. And that's why there's been a push to say, well, why only look at affordable housing? Also look at attainable. In fact, there's been legislation once again proposed to broaden the definition of affordable to better include attainable. But that's the downside of what the state has been forcing towns to do through its updates to affordable housing plans.
Well said, but those are all changes that have to be made. You're talking right now about an affordable housing plan that fits into the glove that exists within the state today.
Not fully. We've had a lot of discussion also about attainable. We have to have stuff in here about affordable to meet what the state wants, but we've also been having a lot of good discussions about attainable housing as to what can we do realistically, separate from what the state is doing or not doing affordable, but what can we do with regards to attainable? We've had a lot of those discussions when we went through the subdivision regulations some years ago, and other things. So this discussion, even though this plan has certain pigeonholes because of what the state is doing, it hasn't, I think, limited some of our discussions about attainable, because if there's things we can do in our regulations that could be helpful to people, that's certainly good, separate from whatever the state says meets its criteria for affordable, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, except for the fact that you've got a deadline of June to come up with an affordable, not attainable, but affordable housing plan.
We
And
do.
that you're working diligently at. And I think that, I don't see how you can come up with something within the town, just because of the support it requires, what's the goal?
Well, we've actually put that into our plan. We actually talk about our limitations, because a lot of towns have pushed back to the legislator saying you've required this update to a plan, which in some regards is gonna not be applicable because there's so many towns that can't meet those marks. And so that's one of the serious failings of the state law that says, oh, you gotta update your plan. That's a serious failing on the part of the state, the legislature, I believe. And there's been a lot of pushback, even in this session, about why are you making towns go through some of this? And a lot of towns never meet some of these affordability goals because of their lack of infrastructure. So we've actually noted that in this plan to say, we have serious limitations on what we can do with affordable housing.
So that's noted in this draft
It
plan.
is, yep, we've had discussions at the last,
That part.
oh, it's in there, we discussed it.
Oh.
If there's been some revisions to the text on that, because that's a serious failing. We're not the only town pushing that to say these housing plans are gonna be difficult because they're trying to make this meet their definitions for the state, but it's so difficult for a lot of towns to meet it. So even though we have to meet the state mark, it's not at all, I think, going to limit us in really looking realistically, or continue to, what is affordable versus attainable. And quite frankly, in a town like Woodstock, there's a lot of things we could probably do towards more the attainable mark than the affordable mark per the definition. And we've had a lot of discussions over the years about that. Unfortunately, the state isn't viewing it that way. The state just wants to go with its existing state statute and make the towns more comply with it, even though it's destined for some towns to fail. And we'll see what the legislature does this time around, but so far they're not looking to change the definitions. But Delia?
The document that I provided to the Ag Commission on Monday is not the plan. That was a copy
No,
of the presentation.
Right.
I understood that. Understood that.
But your point you're making is a point we've been making for some time, and a lot of other towns are, that this affordability plan that the state wants is really missing some of the mark on what is actually attainable.
Okay, in
So-
consideration of that, then there has been some feeling within the agricultural community in town that they would like to be able to do something other than trailers for housing workers. There's, well, Doug Young has H2A housing that is immigrant seasonal workers. But other than that, there's been a couple of inquiries that people would like to get as perhaps a portion of the compensation for their farm workers, to be able to provide them with some kind of housing on site. And I think that one of the considerations that the zoning commission should look at, but the planning particularly, is looking at what kind of considerations we could give to perhaps a dairy farm that is hiring, needs 35 people to, not seasonal workers, but these are 35 people that are working year round. And if the housing could be part of the compensation, that would help them hold and maintain qualified workers.
And we've had those discussions previously when we redid the subdivision regs. There was some discussion, what do we do with that? We didn't make any changes then. We actually had discussions about that as part of our ag regulations. When we had to stop on those so we could deal with this, but we actually had some discussions about when we redo our, some of the aspects of ag regulations, we did touch upon what do we need to do potentially relative to any type of ag or farm housing. That did come up during some of those meetings that we had. And so those are things, that have come across our radar. Certainly, we welcome further discussion, with members of the ag community. It doesn't have to necessarily be in this plan. Just because if something is or isn't in this plan doesn't stop us from continuing to move forward. In fact, just once we submit this plan to the state, it doesn't mean we're done with affordable housing, attainable housing. It's something further we need to be looking into and doing. We just have to meet the deadline with the state, but it's not our deadline for our overall work. And we're going to be pivoting back to ag. And on our to-do list for ag has been, what do we discuss about housing and things like that and allow it. So that's a good point to remind us on, because it is stuff that we want to be looking at and getting back to. So it'd be great to get further input. Absolutely. Delia?
I attended the Ag Commission meeting on Monday and I asked them some questions and they did get back to me with feedback from several farmers. So I have the emails showing on the screen.
And this is stuff that we're
And
seeing
I'm gonna
tonight,
be
right?
emailing to people at their homes, the people who didn't attend the meeting in person.
But just so we know for the record, this is stuff that
But
you
the
gave us
people-
tonight, right?
Yes, so the
Okay.
people who are here, it's at your place with the stuff that I handed out.
Yep.
So Stu Morse emailed me with feedback about the employees at the farm the Millers have. And then also for Doug Young and Tim Young. And then on another separate email, we heard back about, I think it was more of a general number without specifics. I got an email from Stu. Actually, Fairview Farm responded here. They have 8 ag workers. They're all full-time year-round, and they're interested in housing, either ownership or rentals. And they make on average $55,000 a year. And then I heard back from Emily Hebert. She spoke to several farms, and didn't say how many, but she said on average they have 48 workers. They're paid $12 to $17 an hour. And they also have some additional part-time high school students. They work full-time 30 to 40 hours a week. And most of the employees are currently living in Thompson, Union, or in Woodstock, for the farms that she spoke to. There's also a farm that most of their employees either live in Putnam or Willamette.
This is very helpful for us because as I just mentioned, some of this stuff we were discussing, we're starting to get into in our ag discussions. So it's on our list of various items on ag stuff, because housing had been raised to us, to get by whom to look at as part of ag regulations, separate from when we had to pivot to this. So even once this plan gets submitted to the state, again, that's not going to stop our discussions on some of these things and decision making on what further to do for the town, even if it doesn't meet the state's affordable. Again, it's like attainable. What more can we do to be of help? So a lot of this stuff to flesh out more is going to be extremely helpful for us. So if it is something of further interest with you guys, with the Ag Commission, would love to have you guys, provide us more information, talk with us more. Happy to have you guys at our meetings and we can flesh more of that stuff out. Because we are going to be pivoting back to ag once we're done with this.
That would be great. When the affordable housing came up, and I can't thank Delia enough for coming Monday. It was a very, very informative meeting for the Ag Commission, and we had maybe 4 or 5 spectators in the gallery. So thank you for that, and we are anxiously awaiting the change of venue from affordable housing back to agriculture.
Or our plan has been, because unfortunately we were required by the state to deal with this, we had no choice but to put several things on hold. But it is mindful that our strategic plan has us pivoting back to ag once this is done. So that's coming up soon.
Well, kind of from facetious remark, but from what you say about creating the plan, and it seems like it could have been done probably 3 months ago, and just put it in there and say, okay, this is our plan, but this is really what we'd like to do.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could have done that, but we couldn't. That wouldn't have worked that way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, however, a lot of the information we've gotten has been extremely helpful for us to be looking at other things as well. So it actually was very helpful for us, but this exercise needed to be done to a certain degree. But given the limitation in time, it means something has to go in. But one thing we're very mindful of, and I think it's good to have on the record, just because we have this plan that gets submitted, and then in 5 years, we're required to update it again, we can update this anytime in between, just like the plan of conservation development. We don't have to wait 10 years to update any part of it. So if we come back in a year and say there's further updates we want to make to it, we can make it. It just doesn't stop just because of the June 1st deadline with the state. That's more to submit something to them. Our work continues. So we're planning, as I think, once we hit June, that we're pivoting back to ag and a few other things, but ag will pivot back.
I'm off my soapbox.
We'll let you know when we're doing it, but I think right now our plan has been starting in June. Because then we'll be done with this document. Delia,
I think both at one point Doug and Sid had raised their hands.
did you guys? I don't want to miss you guys because I can't fully see you with do either of you have something to say? Or did I miss you?
Doug, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Okay,
Mine was coming back a long time ago about the 1 unit versus attached versus the 1 unit detached dwellings. And I just, we confuse duplexes and things like that, and a duplex is actually just 2 single-family units with a common wall. And I think it's very helpful that Delia has this information, what describes as a single-family structure.
is this stuff that you put into the document, Delia, for clarification, these things that we were asking for clarification? Did you put any of this stuff in? I have to take a look.
I don't remember if I put in the part about condominiums. I can't remember now, but some of the stuff in there I did mention it where I've done it.
Do we feel having certain things to better clarify 1 unit attached, 1 unit detached in this plan would be helpful?
On page 7, where these graphs are, which talks about, the 1 unit attached and 1 unit detached, that might be a good place to put the response to question number 2.
That's true. That would be helpful, right? So people know what that means.
Yeah.
Be able to do that, Delia, on that page?
I might have to put it on the page before or the page after, but sure.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. I think anything that better clarifies is helpful, especially if we say we come back in a year and need to review this, we may not remember our discussion. So, thank you. I'll let you continue on, Delia, as far as anything further.
One moment, I'm just writing myself a note.
And Sid, did you have something?
Yeah, I did. I read the additions in green on pages 51, 53, and 54. Really wasn't clear why they were in there. And if Stuart Morris is still in the audience, is it okay if I ask him a question or two directly?
Sure. Can you hear?
I can't hear a thing.
He can't hear you. I don't know if we're able to better do the.
Oh,
You want to put your chair right here?
I can hear him, so maybe I can.
Live.
Well, it's a little chair, that's the way.
Or you
must be-
can,
I just get closer.
I must be lying well. So,
Stuart, can you hear me?
I'm working at it. Go ahead.
come over here.
Oh,
you want to sit at the table?
yeah. I don't know.
I don't
have a-
bite.
I don't have a ticket. Sid, go.
Yeah, okay. Stuart, this is Sid Blodgett. I just looking for some clarification about what you just said. So as chair of the Agriculture Commission, it sounds like the farmers in town feel like they want to have the option of either temporary or permanent housing, which meets the state's affordable housing definition, which means it'll be deed restricted. And are you looking to kind of replicate what apparently Doug Young has done on his property with trailers or prefab housing for workers? And if so, are you looking to subdivide your land or keep it as one large tract with this potentially permanent housing on it for employees?
The idea that we've been floating around and working with is having some type of permanent housing that on site of whether it be a dairy farm or an orchard. The dairy farm is probably more applicable because Doug has, as I said, the H2A seasonal workers that come in. They're not there 365 days a year. The dairy employment is looking to keep their employees there 365 days a year. If in fact the housing could be a portion of the cost of housing could be considered part of their compensation, then we're floating the idea that that might be qualify for a deed restricted housing and would perhaps help with the affordable housing plan. We don't know that it would, but anyway, it's an idea. The advantage of having that would be for the venue to be able to hold on to valued employees. The employees don't have to travel to go to work, and the employee family gets the benefit of the educational system, which the town has to offer, hopefully, in the great American dream, just moving on and bettering themselves and doing other things, perhaps become farmers someplace else or here.
Good. Okay. Well, thanks. That helps. And you know more about this than I do, but when we
I
say
doubt that.
government subsidized, or I'm sorry, when we say deed restricted, does that mean government subsidized construction?
You've got me. I'm just looking. First time I ran into deed restriction was with the definition of affordable housing. It's got to be deed restricted, and whether that's a FHA or a income ceiling limit on who can rent it, I'm not sure. I'm suggesting that we might want to investigate the possibility that a portion of the housing cost would be their compensation, and would that qualify as a deed restriction?
Yeah.
That if you're going to work at US Button and try to use that housing, that you would not qualify, because I'd want to be able to have you there in the morning, and whether it's milking my cows, but a portion of your weekly salary would be deducted as a cost of housing.
Okay. All right. And then just lastly, would you be looking, I shouldn't say you personally, but would a farmer be looking to subdivide his land through planning and zoning for each, let's call it housing unit, or are you looking at not doing that?
I would think that that would be something that the planning and zoning has to come up with contingency plan, that if in fact I'm running my dairy farm and I have a 10-unit apartment on it that I'm using for housing workers, and I get old and decrepit and I get out of the dairy business, that there have to be conditions that would be reverted back to, that it's got to be, you've got to have 12 acres of pre-surveyed land that I've been able to farm all the time I'm operating, but now that the farming is stopped, that's going to go into a recognized zone or subdivision. No, subdivision, a bad word, not subdivision. I think it would be the P and Z would be responsible to actually get off of this just one residential zone and create a description and perhaps a building envelope that would be applicable to the agricultural industry.
And that would be, in a sense, creating an overlay.
Well, it would be recognized perhaps a agricultural exemption for a particular length of time. In perpetuity until the farm, as long as the farm was operating, and once the farm stopped operating, they'd lose their agricultural exemption, and they'd have to now, instead of having that housing unit set on 3 acres of land, now they'd have to designate 12 acres of land for that housing to accommodate that housing.
There are different ways to skin that cat. Sometimes you can do overlay zones too, that can be put into different areas. Also, when we get back to discussions about ag, some of that would get into what is the land being used for. And housing and stuff could certainly be considered as far as how would that fit into, say, a working farm versus someone wants to do housing that's going to be part of a subdivision or mixed use somewhere with an industrial or commercial, building. So there's several different ways to look at that, but part of that would be how do we want to fit in that type of housing? Wouldn't say outright exemption, would be creating a different set of rules and ways of looking at it as far as where these housings are put. Again, what is designated ag, what is designated residential and mixed use. There's different types of housing that we look at and we think of. So that would be, a venue to do that type of thing.
Sid, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did, Stuart. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Doug Porter, be warned, I would like to discuss that with you.
Okay.
So, well, before we get into Doug,
Yeah.
Julia has her hand up, and then Doug.
I was just warning Doug, I was going to sit down.
I just wanted to respond to Sid's question. Deed restricted may or may not be a property that involves government funding. That doesn't really, it could be coincidentally on the same property. And I don't have a lot of experience with deed restricted properties because as you can see on that table on page 3 of the plan, there are 0, now there are 4 properties, but I believe last year there were 0 in our region. So there are 4 in Plainfield as of the last update to the state's affordable housing appeal list. But I believe the year before there were 0. So there's no one in the region has experience with them up until very recently.
Doug, and then I have something I want to speak to. Doug?
Yeah,
You
it's
had your hand up?
Stu's comment about using part of their wages comes in the form of the housing component. The IRS will treat that as part of their wages. So that will create a problem for them to meet the deed covenants if it says they have to be a certain percentage of the median income. The IRS is very quick to include any non-cash payment as part of a wage. They will get that back to them very quickly.
Well, if it was actually filed and claimed by the taxpayer, that would eliminate that problem.
I didn't hear the beginning of that, Stuart.
I was saying that I don't even begin to say that I know the answer to that question, other than if the individual taxpayer was to claim that, say, $200 a month as income, that would eliminate that problem, wouldn't it?
Well, I think what you'll find, and my accounting's a little bit old, but I actually think the farmer who pays them would have to show that on their W-2 that they received in-kind payment of rent, subsidy, housing subsidy. And the problem is it's going to push them above the median income that would qualify them for a deed restricted housing.
Perhaps. I know that in my background, I've received trips as part of rewards from various manufacturers, and they had to submit it, and I had to claim it as the IRS caught up with me and explained it to me.
Correct. And the IRS is very careful with, in terms of doing that now. And I think even the local farmers would be able to speak to that, because I know some farmers that had used cut wood on their land and gave that to their employees. And then the IRS came back and said that that wood had to be treated as income and they had to show that on their tax forms.
I was just kind of floating a balloon with that. But I think it's got some investigation to do.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple things to say then, Delia, then David. On page 54,
Can I go
Delia,
sit
just a
down?
couple of wordsmithing things. Show that on the screen, I'll wait. I think there will be a little bit for clarification for people. So-
Jeff, we're having a hard time hearing you now.
Oh, okay. How about now? Can you hear us now?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, Delia moved the gain, I guess, up. So that first paragraph, I don't know if you can see it well, that said that,
Zoom in a
yeah,
little.
why don't you? That begins without after number 2. If you go down to the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the 4th line down, and on the right side, it begins with Woodstock should, and then it gets into allow for housing types in the land use regulations. I would clarify that to say Woodstock should continue to allow, because we actually have been allowing for various types of housing. That was part of what we did with the subdivision regulation changes. So I think it would better reflect the fact that we have been doing this, and we should continue to be thinking of what types of housing types there are relative to land use regulations that best meet the needs. So I would suggest we say Woodstock should continue to allow. And then the other thing along that theme, if you, I think it's already there, on the next paragraph, where it talks about the 3rd line, or all the way down to the right side of that paragraph, it says land use regulations. You see where it is right here. There's that big bolded text, and underneath it to the right, it says land use regulations that allow for variety in housing types must recognize. I would say that Woodstock land use regulations that allow for variety in housing types should continue to recognize, because again, we have been recognizing it. And it has been something we've been aware of, and we should continue to do that. So I think that would just, in my mind, better clarify and remind people that the commission has been doing that work and should continue to look at these things.
Can you go over the addition again?
Yep, so it would start Woodstock land use regulations that allow for variety in housing types should continue to recognize. And then it goes on to say that property owners have varying needs and yet respect the right to seek out appropriate solutions as needed. I just think if we make those changes, it better reflects the work we have been doing over the years and the work we know we need to continue to do. Because things always evolve and we should always be looking what works, what doesn't, what needs to change. So it's just a little wordsmithing, but I think it would better reflect what we've been doing and where we're going. If that makes sense, unless anybody has an objection. Okay. You got that, Delia?
Yes.
David, you had something you wanted to talk with us about, or you had a question?
I just wanted to, one of the main reasons we put this whole agriculture thing in here was just to kind of display the importance of agriculture to the town and why that makes it difficult for us to meet some of the state goals. I mean, I'm kind of getting derailed here some in some of these conversations, not that they're not important, but as far as this plan, I thought our main goal was just to promote bring out the importance of agriculture, and how a lot of times the needs of agriculture and the needs, I mean, it's important, but we need, it's hard to make the two balance, affordable housing and agriculture.
The way the state defines
The way
affordable housing.
the way the state defines it, yes.
And
The
again,
attainable housing, I think it's something we need to work for, but I think, it just emphasizes the rural nature of the town and how important it is to us and to the state. So that if somebody goes through this and reads it, it'll be clip somewhere that says, we need to what these towns are like rather than Hartford or water.
yep, and that's why we also have on page 50, there's things in there about identifying any roadblocks, because those are real issues. And in fact, a lot of folks who, have been, when I've done my testimony last year and this year to the legislature and have been talking with some of them, one of the things I mentioned is what is considered affordable housing in what they do in, say, New Haven is radically different from what is even possible here in Woodstock. We have no major public transportation. No offense to the NECOG bus, but we don't have the metro lines like they have on the South Shore, a bus service in the cities. We
We
have,
don't have the sidewalks.
we don't have the sidewalks. We don't have where you're gonna walk, everybody would walk or bike to their job if they can't afford a car, let alone in the winter. We don't have really public sewer to the extent that would support public housing. And you put some text in here about the public sewer. And I'll note for the record, Roger Gale, chair of WPCA, couldn't be here tonight. We don't have a lot of this stuff, and including if you want to keep the town agriculture. And also, we're still in a part of the state that there's still a state law in effect that says trying to promote the rural and green nature of this part of the state. If you start, how are you going to balance all that stuff? So you're right, those are important limitations that we should be highlighting. All the more reason why, if we can't meet some of those affordability marks with the state, they should be changing some of their stuff, but we are looking at things realistically about attainability, which I think is very valid for us to be looking at. So, but I think it's good to have some of this stuff in here so people are mindful of what we are and what people would like to continue us to be, and all these things we have to balance. So,
Cameron?
Yep.
I'm putting my mouth there again. If you had some specific questions about the sewer system, and Roger could not be here, perhaps I could help you with them. I've been a member of the WPCA for longer than I can remember.
Well, I spoke last night with Roger, and the thing that he wanted to make certain we were aware of is that we're not looking, he wanted to make certain we weren't going to be suggesting to start expanding the sewer line all over the place, to start connecting all around town. I told him I'm not aware that's what we're been thinking and proposing. That was his one concern. That we have the section that's the sewer, but there isn't a plan to start expanding it all over the place.
No, there is an established sewer district within town, and we have a sewer avoidance policy. The district within town is probably 99.9% connected. And so there's virtually no room for, there's no opportunity for anybody else to connect to.
Yeah, and Delia put text in here regarding the sewer avoidance policy and that stuff, and that's another limitation, because if you're gonna start putting in a lot of affordable housing, you gotta have an infrastructure for it. That becomes an issue. But Delia, on page 51, you put in a whole bunch of text, which is up there. So that was what Roger had expressed a concern to me last night. He wanted to make certain that we weren't gonna propose starting to put sewer all over the place, and we're not.
So, Stu, is it that the department can't take anymore?
No, Woodstock, I don't know how much Putnam can take. Woodstock is really a commercial customer to Putnam. We treat no sewer. All we do is pump into them, and they charge us per gallon. We have a current standing contract that we may pump 100,000 gallons a day to Putnam. And until that contract is renegotiated, we cannot go over it. We are in we have a problem with I&I that we're working on. I&I stands for inflow and infiltration. When the hydraulic conditions of the ground get high, then it just forces a lot more water through the cracks that are there. And we're actually negotiating with a engineering firm, and we've created a tactical plan to chase this I&I. But right now, we don't have a lot of wiggle room in our $100,000, a 100,000 gallon pumping capacity.
So we see where it's going.
Again, Delia did put in some text
Hmm.
about the public sewer district, so to speak, and the avoidance policy. And so it's good to have in there because it's another highlight of limitations we face as far as, the makeup of the town, so to speak, with its infrastructure. We're not like a big suburb where they have their own, everyone is connected to public water, everyone's connected to public sewer, and doesn't think about it. But it is very much in there, so that's, I think, helpful to put in, make that clear where we stand. Did you have something, Delia?
Yes, Joe Pluto couldn't be here at the meeting, but he did send me his comments.
Mhm.
And one of them was that he found what he thought was a typo where it says oils and he felt it should say soils.
Can you tell us where that is? so
Right
we're
here
aware
on
of
the
it?
screen, where middle of the paragraph that starts with failures. Failures of subsurface sewage disposal systems have generally occurred in isolated areas in which the development has been too dense to be accommodated by the on-site soils. However, proper cognizance of oils, he was saying it should say soils. I agree that would make sense, but this is a direct quote from the water pollution control plan.
So if that's what it says, that's what it says. You're gonna quote them, you gotta quote them.
Well, I think we should go back to the commission to make sure that they weren't not misquoted, but forgot to put the S in.
We can ask them. You also didn't, and where's, oh yeah, there it is.
This is a quote here.
Where's the
there,
quote?
And then the reference numbers there.
But where does this quote end? All the way down.
It's this whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
the
it's
quote,
inside.
but there's a quote that is right before oils.
I have to,
Okay. So then you probably should get rid of that quote if it's not there.
it is a direct quote, but I'll find
Okay.
where the end of it is.
There's another quote here right before support.
Yep, and that ends here. And then there's a little floor for the
So I
reference.
guess you're gonna have to find out about,
Yeah, I put a note here.
okay. We can always ask them if it was where they left the S off, it can always be dealt with. But I agree with you, it seemed to make sense that it should be soils instead of oils.
Yeah.
So, but that can always be clarified, that's easy. So, did you have anything else in green other than I think you had something on
I
page
wanted
60?
to, before we get there, I wanted to share the map that I had made
All right,
to show the sewer district. The Mylar that's on file with the town clerk that shows the sewer district is scanned and it's kind of hard to read. So you could either use the map that I had made, or I could just see if I could get a better scan of the actual Mylar.
so is this map then that you've given us tonight? That's the one you're suggesting we use?
Yes.
Okay, because
It
it's
should have the
clearer.
same properties that's on the other map. It just hopefully is easier to understand.
That's the one we have at our table, and that
Right.
you're showing on the screen.
Yes. And I'll be emailing all of these documents that I've shown tonight to everyone at home.
I mean, if the map is clearer, and why not use it?
So I could either use it in place of the one that's there, or I could do
Well,
both,
to
whatever
be
you
honest
like.
with you, the one that's there is a lot more difficult to read than the one you're showing on the screen. I would, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm open to what people think of, but the map that's on the screen that Delia is providing us, I don't know if it's sharing on the screen or not. That's a lot easier to digest and understand
One
than
moment.
the black and white map from the Mylar plan, which can be a bit difficult to read and make sense
I
of.
think we're seeing it. One moment.
Yeah, I don't think it's being shared. We'll try to get it up on the screen.
There, can you see the map now? Everybody at home?
I don't know, that's an easier map from what I look at than the other one. I don't know what others think, but
Looks better.
that's the one Delia's presented.
Was that a table tonight?
Yeah,
Yes.
She's suggesting we use that one instead of the one that's in the, that is a black and white photostat of the Mylar of the sewer district,
Okay.
which is, to me, difficult to read that other one.
Yeah, I'm good with that. This is good.
Everybody else okay with that one that Delia's suggesting we go with?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else, Delia?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a question, Joe?
After the is done on other pages in here.
Okay,
I'm just gonna stop sharing this map because I have something else to show.
okay, sounds fine. Okay.
Joe was kind enough to send me some questions about where the numbers came from in the housing needs assessment. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. So what I'm showing you is actually a separate document. I actually showed for tonight just to make it clear. And then I just find what page that's on.
Okay.
So page 40 shows this table, and I've color coded just for this purpose, these numbers, and you look on the following pages and you'll see those income values show up again. And also the values that you have here for the total number of households, they come from a different place, and if you'd like, I can go online and show you where it came from. And so both the income values and the household values are from the American Community Survey from 2014 to 2018. And the report on the previous page, this is a direct clip from the website. That's what the table looks like. That's why it says click for more detail. That's what it looks like on their website. And this is from a report dated in 2021. So when I started this, 2021 was the most recent report. They now have a 2022, but that could be using a newer American Community Survey, but I don't know that I have the same values available to me to compare the other data, because I tried to use the most recent that I could find. And if you'd like, I can go to those links and show you. But that's where the values came from.
Okay.
Okay,
And when you're looking at, not this table, but the next table, these numbers are cumulative. So it's 115, on the previous page, you saw 170. You didn't see 285, you saw 115, 170, and 300 in those red, orange, and yellow columns
Mhm.
under owner occupied. And so I made a mistake in my math. On the bottom of the page, it should say 190, not 185. And also on the supply minus the demand, it should say 176.
so those are
Corrections that I've made.
corrections that you'll make on page 43. it looks like.
Yes.
Okay, so you're just letting us know that the numbers just need to be fixed.
So when I fix it, it's not gonna look like this in the document. You're not gonna see the orange and yellow and red. I'll just fix it. It'll look normal, but it'll have the right number.
Okay. Joe?
So if we can stay on these two tables. The housing gap analysis, family of 4 household. That's on the top of page 43.
Okay.
Okay, shows that in the demand column, the 115, 285, and 585 demand or needs for Woodstock for a family of 4. That's what I'm reading. Okay. Then going to the table on page 44, the housing gap analysis for a single person household, it has the same numbers. I don't know if that's a limitation on how you find the data.
Well, I can show you where I got it from, but I didn't know you had this question because you didn't
Okay.
send it to me early enough, so I didn't address that, but I can just take you right to the table where the data comes from.
All right.
Are you surprised that they're both the same set of numbers for a single
No,
family and a
I
4?
looked it up earlier today.
Okay.
So here we see 2014, 2018. Everybody online, are you seeing this website? This is 2006 to 2017 at the top.
No, it's not on the screen.
I have to stop share and then start the share again.
Okay. It's not letting you show it?
It's not offering it here.
Oh. That's fine. So these questions come up. So do you want to at least just
Well, I can
mention
show you the
how the
people who
numbers
are-
are so we can at least,
I can show the people who are here and describe it for anybody else.
all right.
And
so-
then, if you were to go to that link, you'll be able to do it yourself. So it says, please select data year. This is the most recent data on that website.
So what you're showing is 2014 to 2018.
Yes.
Okay.
Below that, it says, please select geographic summary level. You hit the drop-down menu and you go down to MCD, which I believe is micro. I don't remember what it stands for. I knew at one time. I can't remember at the moment. Please select a state. Obviously, we're gonna choose Connecticut. And then when it catches up to me, you move down to Woodstock,
And it gives you data tables.
and here's the data, the very same data. It doesn't give a, it doesn't break down by households because
Are
this
the
is
people at home seeing this?
the income.
No,
She's
So
not able
nobody's
to
seeing
share
it.
it.
no.
Right.
I can show it to you guys, but the share
Isn't
option is
showing.
not providing that.
But suffice it to say, to answer Joe's question, the numbers that you're coming up with are all off of the databases that you're telling us that you're getting into.
And I have this document as a PDF. I just wanted to show you that I did get it right off the internet, so I can find that document and share that
Okay.
document if you want.
So even though there are different tables for a family of 4 and a single person household, and the columns for max home value for a family of 4 is obviously much higher than the max home value for an individual, one might expect that demand would be a different number for the single person versus a family of 4, but the demand for the single person is the same as a family of 4 household. And the same holds true for the renter, the 2 tables for the renter. A family of 4 renter occupied has the same number of demand figures as the single or individual renter occupied.
There it's
Anyway.
on the screen. Did you want to quickly let us know, Delia? Because otherwise.
I mean,
it
if
sounds like
Delia's
that's-
getting those numbers from the tables, it's.
So that's where
just-
you're getting them from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow it segregates or differentiates numbers for costs and supply for 4-family and single, but it's not differentiating for the demand.
It just shows
If
us
that's
owner
all,
renter.
So if that's the data that's available, that's the way it's available.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
go down, the data
Right.
goes on to other things like housing problems.
understand
It
still,
doesn't go on
Right.
to,
Okay. So that answer your question, Joe, that basically this is the data that is being accessed from the online database, and that's the way the data is presented.
And the data is driving our decisions. And if I look at that housing gap for the single person household, and you see the gap, those are two big numbers. But it's using the same figures as a family of four demand. But if the demand for a single person household are lower numbers, then the gap would be smaller numbers. Right?
But I guess if that's the data, I mean, then we can only go with the way the data is presented. I understand your point.
Well, I'm just trying to be cautious that if we drive decisions based on data, but the data doesn't necessarily tie together all the time, we may have to be careful on our decisions.
Which is a good point. Okay, did you have anything further, Delia?
No, I'm just trying to get back to that table in case anyone
Okay.
else had any
All right.
comments.
Did you have any other items for this?
I think that was my last.
Okay. Does anyone have any other items on this? I just want to make certain I can catch people on Zoom as well, so I don't miss you. Nancy, Sid, Doug, do you have anything further at this time?
I'm all set. This is Doug.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Anything further from any of us here? So one thing we do have to think about is, Delia, you have some additional edits to do. But it doesn't look like they're huge.
Just the things you brought up.
Yep.
tonight, those math corrections.
So what do we wish to do? We have a meeting technically for next week. We can keep that meeting, and we also have one the week after, May 5th. Do we want to not have the meeting next week? Give Delia a chance to do whatever she needs to do to update some of the stuff she's told us and put some of the stuff in, like those maps and whatever. Give her, well, otherwise it'd be limited time to get it out to us in time to be able to review things ahead of time for next week's meeting. Give her next week to do the stuff.
Tomorrow.
Well, you'll just have to go into work tomorrow.
No.
Is there a motion for that?
To ask Delia to go to work?
Yeah.
Well, my kids had vacation all week and tomorrow's the only day I'm taking off, so I'm not going in tomorrow.
Isn't that a bring your child to office to work day or something?
I get to bring my child to his college as a
I did
freshman
that when we
orientation
did
tomorrow.
COVID.
Yeah.
So-
I
Had
had
enough.
my fill of that.
So do we want to not have a meeting next week? Give Delia the chance next week? And then May 5th, we meet anyway. This will allow Delia to get the stuff done and out to us with enough heads up that we can get stuff posted online. If we're not going to do next week is purely a special meeting just to discuss this. If we're not going to do it next week, we would just need a motion to cancel the meeting.
I move cancel. Oh, David, so moved it. Either one. Move cancel
Anybody?
next week's meeting.
He moved. I need a second.
Second.
So motion by Moore, second by Blackmer to cancel the April 28th meeting. Is there any discussion? I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
Aye.
Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Jeff Markov, aye. David Morse,
Aye.
Doug Porter,
Aye.
and Timothy Young. That so passes. So that should give time then Delia to get whatever stuff together and get a new update to us.
But in the time frame, that means at our May meeting, we have to approve this so that it can be submitted to the town, or unless we have another meeting, a different meeting after the
Right.
May 5th meeting.
We may realistically be able to approve it at our upcoming meeting. There hasn't been much edits there.
Right.
Actually, a lot of the edits are pretty straightforward and things that you're putting in corrected tables and new maps. So we can see how things go at that May meeting, but soon we're going to need to approve this so that way everything can be sent in and verified that the state receives it and does whatever the state does before June 1st.
Should we,
Would that be a
Make
bad
a-
thing to get it approved early in the month? I mean, there's no reason we have to wait until the deadline to
Well, we know
approve it
what.
if we have the right data in there, correct?
Well, we didn't have a lot of big edits right now. So I would say then we could potentially consider that for May 5th. Because this is the only thing on the agenda for May 5th. There's nothing else on that meeting. It's purely this. And we can remind people that, we're going to continue to have a meeting, and if there's any further input, to get us input, but, we continue to give people opportunities. One thing we got to be careful of, if we were to move this, and not approve it, say May 5th, and wait till our business meeting the 19th, we may well have a number of items on that as part of our business meeting with applications, which could limit what time we have to do it then. I wouldn't suggest we wait till the 26th, because that's way too close to June 1st. So let's see where we are on May 5th, but we may actually be in a position that we could.
Approve it with any minor edits that we come up
Pressure
with.
is on Delia.
What, Delia?
So for the May 5th, I'll take out all red strikeouts and I'll turn all the text that we're keeping to black. And then you'll have what hopefully will be your final draft.
And we'll just make certain we post it up on the website, because it'll be a new draft. But that we could potentially do that. We'll have that meeting alone just to focus on, there's nothing else. So I think it's doable, because I think we went through a lot of stuff tonight and gotten further input, and then we'll see where we are, but I think that's attainable. But we'll meet on May 5th. I'll send a notice that the next week's meeting is canceled. So.
Is it worth trying to advertise somehow that the final draft is being,
We have been, we get word out. Yeah, we have been.
how?
Well, we do it by social media, which seems to get one of our best ways of getting things out. The town more and more is using social media on Facebook, actually, for a lot of things. And we otherwise, is a big listserv that things go out to notify people. Have a good night, Stu. And, we can once again send another notice to all boards, agencies, and commissions, which we have been doing. I think we've done it, 3 times, something like that. So we have been. So we'll use the ways we're continuing to do that.
That sounds good.
To remind people of. The next item, Mr. Commissioner Young. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Young, second by Blackburn to adjourn our meeting.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, technically, I got to go through the roll because we're
Aye.
required whenever we have anybody on Zoom. I've been reminded by Rich that we're required to do that. So just bear with me 1 minute. Joe Adeletto.
Aye.
Mark Blackburn.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. Aye. Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morris. Doug Porter.
Aye.
And Timothy Young. That so passes. What do I have? I got 9:49, something like that. Thank you, everybody.